All right, if you're looking to really get a handle on one of the most in-demand databases out there, then you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to lay out a complete step-by-step roadmap to get you from zero to hero with MongoDB, so let's just dive right in.
So, why even start with MongoDB? Well, this number right here pretty much says it all. We're talking over 353,000 stars on GitHub. That's not some tiny niche technology. That is a certified powerhouse in the developer world.
So here's our game plan for this journey. We're going to start with the why, the big opportunity. Then we'll build a solid foundation with the fundamentals, learn how to actually talk to the database, then figure out how to make it super fast, and finally, how to make it scale to massive sizes and keep it secure.
Okay, so let's kick things off with that call to adventure. Why is learning MongoDB right now such a huge opportunity for any developer who really wants to stay on the cutting edge?
So, what even is MongoDB? Well, at its heart, it's what we call a NoSQL database. Now, what that means is, instead of those rigid tables with rows and columns you might be used to, it uses these super flexible things called documents. And trust me, that flexibility is a total game changer for building modern apps. It's also source available, which just means you can go look at the code yourself, though there are some rules on how you can use it.
This slide right here really gets to the core of it. Think about a traditional SQL database, like a spreadsheet. The columns are fixed, and you can't really change them. MongoDB, on the other hand, is more like a folder full of individual Word documents. Each one can have its own unique structure. That dynamic, flexible schema, that's its real superpower.
All right, so we've established why this is so important. Now it's time to take our first actual steps on this path. And mastering the basic vocabulary, the fundamental language of MongoDB is absolutely crucial to understanding how it all fits together. Now, if you're coming from the SQL world, here's a really easy way to think about this. A collection is kind of like a table, and a document is basically a row inside that table. The big difference, though, is that each document is this rich structure of key-value pairs, a lot like a JSON object you'd see in JavaScript. So I just mentioned JSON, but what's really happening under the hood is that MongoDB uses something called BSON, which stands for binary JSON. Because it's a binary format, it's way faster and more efficient for the database to parse and work with. But even more importantly, it extends JSON by supporting way more data types.
And this is where you can really see the power of BSON. It gives us all these specialized types, like object IDs for totally unique identifiers, really precise date and timestamp objects, and different sizes for integers. What this all means is that we have much finer control of our data right from the get-go.
Okay, so we get the structure. Now, how do we actually do stuff with the data? This next part is all about learning to speak the language of MongoDB.
It really all boils down to these four basic operations, which you'll hear called CRUD. That's create, read, update, and delete. These are the essential verbs you're going to use every single day, whether you're adding new data with the insert command or pulling it out with find command.
So how do we make our find queries more specific and powerful? Well, that is where operators come in. For example, you could use a comparison operator like $GT, which means greater than, and combine it with a logical operator like $AND to ask really complex questions. Things like, hey, find me all the users who are older than 25 and who live in New York. These are literally the building blocks for creating some seriously powerful queries.
Okay, so now you know how to talk to the database, but it's time to level up. This is where the real art comes in, making sure your application is absolutely lightning fast even when your data starts to grow. So here it is, the classic developer problem. Every developer hits this wall. Your database is getting bigger and bigger, and your queries are starting to slow down. So what's the secret? How do you maintain that speed? The answer is indexing. It works just like the index at the back of a book. It lets MongoDB find the data it needs instantly, without having to scan through every single document one by one. And you can get really specific here, creating indexes for everything from simple text searches to complex location data. A really good rule of thumb, if you find yourself searching, sorting, or filtering by a field a lot, it probably needs an index.
Now, beyond just finding data, MongoDB has this incredible tool called the aggregation pipeline. Think of it like a factory assembly line for your data. Your documents go in one end, they pass through a series of stages like filtering, grouping, and sorting, and then a totally transformed result comes out the other end. It is unbelievably powerful for doing any kind of data analysis.
We've made it to the final leg of our journey. These are the advanced topics, the
The stuff that really separates the hobbyist from the professional, figuring out how to handle massive scale and how to lock down your data so it's completely safe.
So, how in the world does MongoDB handle gigantic datasets? Well, it uses two main strategies. First, you have replica sets, which basically create copies of your data for safety. So if one server goes down, another one just takes over instantly. Then, for truly massive scale, you use sharding, which splits your data up across tons of different machines. It lets you scale out horizontally, almost infinitely.
And of course, you can't talk about professional-grade tech without talking about security. And MongoDB is built for the enterprise with a whole suite of features. You can control exactly who gets to access what with role-based access control. You can use all the industry standard authentication methods, and you can make sure your data is encrypted both when it's flying across the network and when it's just sitting on the disk.
And there you have it. We've gone from the very basics all the way to the most advanced topics, laying out a really clear path to mastering MongoDB. The blueprint is now in your hands. So the only question left is, what amazing thing are you going to build first?